Today we got some stories of how the weird kid in school got expelled. These were all pretty crazy, so I know you'll enjoy it, so sit back, relax, leave a like on the video to claim your free nothing, and let's just jump right into it. So we're going to call the subscriber who submitted the first story Benson. Yes, Benson like Benson from Regular Show. For all the stories in this video, I'm giving the subscriber a name from Regular Show. You guys are just going to have to deal with it. Anyways, right, so there's a kid in Benson's class, and he was known as the weird kid, and we're just going to call him the weird kid. And this all happened one day. The weird kid was already kind of on thin ice. He'd already did some stuff that kind of like pissed off the faculty or whatever. But this all really started one day when the weird kid was sitting in class, and he actually had class with Benson, and he saw the kid in the back of the class frantically scribbling stuff on pieces of paper. So Benson looked over and he saw the kid just scribbling something down on a piece of paper, stuffing it in his backpack, taking out another piece of paper, scribbling something down, and it looked like he had a whole stack of printer paper with him. So Benson looked over and he leaned over, he's like, "Hey man, what are you doing?" And the weird kid looked up, he's like, "Oh, I'm about to pull a prank, dude." And Benson was like, "Oh, what do you mean by that?" And the kid is like, "Look." And he picks up one of the pieces of paper, he flips it over, and he shows Benson that on the piece of paper is a pee-pee. Yeah, the kid was drawing, not super realistic, but pee-pees, right? He's drawing big old wangs on all these pieces of paper. And he probably had 200 pieces of paper stuffed into his backpack already with frantically drawn pee-pees on them, right? So Benson's just kind of looking at him and is like, "Bro, what? Like, what?" And the kid's like, "Dude, trust me, it's going to be hilarious. Just wait and see." And Benson's like, "Okay, man, sure, whatever." Benson didn't really want to get too involved because he's like, I don't know, bro. I'm just not trying to get involved, man. I'm not trying to get myself into something I don't need to get myself into. But anyways, Benson would soon not get involved, but he would be a part of the celebration in a sense. So after class, the weird kid had finally drawn all 300 of the pee-pee pics, right? And from that point on, from class, he started galloping down the halls, throwing pieces of paper all around as if he was like, walking down the aisle and throwing a rice for a wedding or something like that. Like, I swear, it was that level, right? He's going down the hall, being like, "Penises for you! Penises for you!" and kind of just like throwing clumps of paper that have like penises drawn all over them. And people are just kind of like walking by and they're just kind of like, "What?" So some kid picks up the paper and they're like, "Why is there a big old penis drawn on this?"
"Penises for me! Connor Pugs!"
Exactly. That was a live demonstration of what happened in the story. But anyways, yeah, he's just going around, just kind of like throwing like drawings of penises all around. I got to start saying peepees again. YouTube's going to get mad at me. Just has like throwing around things of like drawings of peepees, right? So people are really confused. And he's like galloping down the hallways. And actually, he breaks into a classroom midway through the teacher teaching the class and throws a bunch of papers in. It says, "Peepees for you all." And all the kids in class just kind of are staring at this kid and are just kind of looking at him with this look of, "Bro, what?" Yeah, so sure enough, eventually he gets caught. So he's probably 200 pieces of paper into the 300. So he's distributed about 2/3 of the pee-pee photos, right? And that's when one of the faculty staff come up to him, grab him by like his collar or whatever, and be like, "You're coming with me." They drag him to the front office. They sit him down, and they said, "Why? Why did you do this? You were already on thin ice." And the weird kid's like, "Do what?" And the guy looks at him. He's like, "Bro." Okay, I don't think the principal looked at him and said, "Bro," but the principal gave him a look that is the equivalent to "bro," right? So anyways, the principal's like, "You obviously did it." And he like picks up his backpack and he opens it up, and there's like 100 pieces of paper with pee-pees drawn on them. And he's like, "Huh?" And the kid's like, "Oh man, that's a coincidence." And the principal's like, and the principal goes over, takes a piece of paper, and shows it to him. So basically, someone took a photo of him doing this, right? And they sent it to the principal, I guess, before they told, I don't know. Somehow the principal got a photo of him galloping around, throwing out pee-pee photos, and he shows him the photo, and he printed it out. He's like, "Look, there's no way you get around this. This is very clearly you." And the weird kid looks at it and says, "Can I look at this for a second?" And the principal's like, okay, sure. He picks it up. He just looks at it. And he looks up at the principal. He says, "Hey, can I keep this for memory's sake?" So we're going to call the subscriber who submitted the next story Mordecai. I already told you guys, I'm on my regular show arc, so we're going to get some regular show names. Anyways, there was a kid in Mordecai's class who was known as the weird kid. And he had been doing weird stuff for a very long time. And he had been accruing basically strikes against them for a very long time. But there were two major things that happened in this story that eventually got him full-on expelled. The first one happened when Mordecai and the weird kid were in class together. So they were sitting in class, and it was a very boring day. Whatever the teacher was talking about was very boring, right? But normally you just, what do you guys do when you're bored in class? You sit there, you space off, you think about the girl who doesn't like you back, you go on your phone, you talk to your friends, you ask to go to the bathroom, which means playing Clash Royale for 45 minutes on the toilet. You do one of those things. However, the weird kid, right, decided that he was going to make class more interesting. He was going to save everyone. And you know how he did that? He looked over and he saw a fire extinguisher. So he literally gets up. Remember, they're sitting in class. The teacher's giving some kind of presentation. The weird kid gets up, walks over to the fire extinguisher, picks it up, and literally starts spraying all the kids in class with the fire extinguisher. So yeah, 1 second kids were sitting down, just spacing out or whatever, and the next second, they look over, and the weird kid is just foaming them with this fire extinguisher. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Everyone's thrown off guard. Obviously, kid gets in trouble for this, because you can't just go over to the fire extinguisher, pick it up, and start spraying people with it. There are a few laws against this. But basically, the weird kid, for some reason, thought that Mordecai and everyone else in the class were against him and ratted on him. I don't totally understand how he got to that conclusion. I think it was because they didn't stand, when the teacher was chewing the weird kid out for spraying everyone with a fire extinguisher, I think he expected them all to stand up in unison and be like, "We stand by the weird kid. If he's getting in trouble, then we're all getting in trouble," which, I don't know, that's kind of ridiculous. I really don't see why that would ever happen. But for some reason, the weird kid just felt betrayed by all the other kids. So the weird kid, he decided that he was going to, get revenge on all the kids. And spraying all of them with a fire extinguisher already put him on thinner ice than he already was. But the weird kid was about to go on even thinner ice. Well, he wasn't going to go on thinner ice. He was about to break through the ice with the next thing. So the next day, Mordecai and everyone else in Mordecai's class that had the same class with the weird kid that got sprayed with the fire extinguisher, they go back to their cubbies. Because they don't have lockers, they have cubbies. Basically, the difference is cubbies are exposed lockers or whatever. And they had their backpacks in there. And when they approach their cubbies, there is a horrible, horrible smell coming from all these cubbies, right? And as they approach it, they realize that someone had gone number 2 in every single cubby. It was absolutely crazy, right? And at first they're just like, "Oh God, this is disgusting." But then they realized how just insane it is that somehow someone went number 2 in every single cubby. And honestly, probably eventually they would have figured out who it was, but they figured out pretty quickly when the weird kid was standing there, smiling with his arms on his hips, laughing at them, being like, "I just pranked you guys. I just pranked you guys so good." And that's when the teacher walks in and it's like, "Oh my God, what's going on over here?" And yeah, so sure enough, the teacher comes over and there's just crap in all of these cubbies, right? And it's just what's going on? And, the weird kid, literally admits to it. He doesn't just admit to it. He's like, "Yeah, I did it." He said it so proudly. And then he went on to explain that the reason why he did number 2 in all these kids' cubbies was because they didn't, quote-unquote, stand up for him when they should have, which, bro, are they really going to stand up for you when you spray them with a fire extinguisher because you were bored? And yeah, to say the least, the kid was already on thin ice, and this was an offense strong enough to get him expelled. We're going to call the subscriber who submitted the next story Rigby. I already told you guys I'm on my Adventure Time arc, so the next names will be Adventure Time names. Yes, at one point the subscriber will be named Muscle Man, so just wait for that. But anyways, we're going to call the subscriber Rigby. So anyways, there was a kid in Rigby's class who we're going to call the weird kid, but he was also known as okay, a rock, right? Think about a rock. What is another name for a rock? Another name for a rock is a stone. If you were to replace ER at the end of stone instead of rock, right? That would be someone who enjoys adult grass. I'm saying this in euphemisms because the YouTube algorithm will smite me if I say it in actual words. So this kid was a big fan of the adult grass, and he was a rocker. Not actually, replace it with stone, but I think you guys know what I mean. But he was also kind of weird, kind of kept to himself, but he also never was super blatant about it. He would do some stuff in school, which, I mean, I hope you guys already know that that's a terrible idea. You will get caught. But, you know, when he ever did stuff in school, he'd either make sure to do it before and just come in all like that, or he'd be very discreet with it, which, you know, it's a little bit hard to be discreet. But one day, this kid kind of just decided that he was no longer going to be discreet. He decided that, like, one day, he was going to just do what he was going to do with the adult grass in the middle of the playground. So there's something, okay, how do I phrase this? When you hit a drum, it goes like bong, right? So take that sound, and that's a word for something that you can inhale the adult grass with, right? It's not very incognito. So this kid, who is a big fan of this stuff, who is always very discreet with it, right? He would never, he would come in a little bit like that, but he would never do anything that would get him blatantly in trouble. One day, in the middle of just, because they have this like, the high school is also attached to a middle school, so they have a playground area for recess or whatever. So when the kids in high school have free period, they can choose to go out there if they'd like to. One day, Rigby, the subscriber, was just outside hanging out with his friend, and there's like a teacher out there watching or whatever, and the kid, the weird kid, who is normally pretty chill and relaxed and never really got involved in that stuff, literally took his drum sound. If you guys remember what I called the drum sound earlier, I have to speak around it because I don't want YouTube to be too mad at me. He took his drum sound outside into the middle of the playground and just started ripping it. Yeah, took massive hits of it in the middle of the playground, which at this point Rigby was looking at him, and he kind of like, you know, not just his friend, he's like, dude, like points at him, and he's like, do you see that kid? And this Rigby's friend's like, yeah, what? Like, no way he's doing what I think he's doing. And Rigby and his friend are just looking at this kid. Middle of the playground, does not care, apparently, about anyone or anything. He was probably on something else by the time he did this, because no one thinking rationally would ever do this, right? But yeah, Rigby and the friend were not the only two people to see this, because the teacher, who was also outside checking in on everyone, or not, who was like monitoring everyone, making sure that they weren't doing anything too crazy, she also saw this, and I think it took her a second to realize what was going on as well, because, I don't know, I guess I would not have expected that. And, yeah, sure enough, the teacher eventually goes over, is like, what are you doing over here? Walks over to him, grabs his device or whatever, his very big device, picks him up. I think at this point, Rigby, the consensus was that this kid was definitely on something else by the time he was doing this, because it was just really out of character for him to just not care at all and do it in front of, like, the teacher in the playground. That was just totally out of character. But either way, he's dragged inside, and Rigby and his friends don't see of him for, like, weeks. And at this point, they assume something bad happened, but eventually they get confirmation that this kid did, in fact, get expelled. So we're going to call the subscriber of the next story Skips. I told you, I'm on the Adventure Time arc. All the names will be Adventure Time names, but regular show names, my fault. Anyways, so Skips was in class, and there's a kid, and this kid was a very weird kid. He was just known as, like, the weird kid. He was a weirdo, man. And girls were kind of weirded out by him. Guys didn't want to associate with him. He was like, I don't know. He was like caught watching very weird anime, if you know what I mean. Like the stuff that would not be safe for work, which, I mean, I really don't care what you watch, but bro was really watching that in class, which that's a whole nother story. But this is not the story about that. This is a story about how this kid got expelled. So he was sitting in class. And Skips was sitting in class with him too. And this kid was sitting kind of in the back row. Skips was sitting in the middle row. And Skips just decides to, he's sitting in class and he just looks behind him for some reason. I think he was just kind of bored or something. And he looks behind him and this kid, the weird kid, right, the sus kid, he has a big hoodie on. And Skips looks behind him and he sees that he has his hoodie over his knees. So his knees are pulled up, has his hoodie over them, and he also has his head under his hoodie. And the kid's vibrating up and down. And Skips is like, the fuck, what? What is bro doing over there? And Skips is just looking at him. And then Skips has a terrible realization. It's a slow sinking sensation. Skips realizes that this kid is, how do I put this? Can you guys figure it out? Do I have to say it directly? This kid is doing something that you do in the privacy of your own home, I guess. All right, this kid is I think I'm far enough in the video that the ad checkers don't read it. This kid's beating off in class, bro. It's so obvious. And Skips is the only one to see this. So Skips is looking behind him. He's like, oh my God. And Skips immediately turns back around and faces forward. And Skips is not going to say anything because he doesn't want to cause any trouble. Real quick, if you made it this far into the video, comment weird down below. That'll be the secret word of the day. I'll try and heart as many as I can. No guarantees, though. Got a lot of stuff to do. Subscribe if you're new. And, yeah. Anyways, so Skips he's not trying to make a problem out of this, right? He's not trying to be that guy who turns him in because he's like, I don't want to get involved. I'm not trying to deal with any of this. But eventually, another kid turns behind, just because, you look behind yourself sometimes, I don't know. Another kid notices this, and he just starts yelling. He's just like, oh my God. And that's when everyone turns around, because if someone screams, oh my God, you're going to turn around. You're going to make sure that there isn't some kind of serial axe murder in class or something. So someone turns around and points, you're going to take a look. So at this point, the entire class looks around. They all see what Skip saw. And even the teacher at this point looked over too. The weird kid immediately stops and pulls his head out of the hoodie or whatever and just acts as nonchalantly as possible. But it was too little, too late, as everyone knew what was going on. Everyone saw what was going on. Immediately, the class erupts into conversation of people talking, people being like, oh my God. And the teacher's like, weird kid, obviously says his real name, but I don't know what his name is. It's like, weird kid, what were you just doing over there? He's like, I don't know what you mean. I wasn't doing anything. The teacher's like, that's not true. You weren't doing nothing. And the kid's like, he was beating his dick. I should probably edit that out. It's too late. I don't edit anyways. So yeah, the whole class erupts into laughter. People are pointing. It's a whole scene. Whatever lesson plan that the teacher had planned at this point, completely thrown off guard. It's just, the teacher doesn't really know what to do. The teacher tells him to go up to the front office and, Skips does, or not Skips, as a subscriber. The weird kid does. The teacher sends up a note. And there's 15 minutes left of class, and the teacher's just not able to control the class. I think the teacher was pretty shocked himself, but instead, you can't go from that happening in class to then learning about, slopes and calculating rate of change, right? You can't go from that to that. You just can't do it, right? Yeah, exactly. And it's just the whole class was talking about the thing the whole time, and immediately, right, kids, as soon as class ended, word spread like wildfire, because this school, some things happened, but, something like that was just interesting enough that everybody wanted to know about it. Everyone wanted to hear about it. So, yeah, Skips became pretty famous at the school, at least for the couple hours before he was eventually expelled. Which, come on now. You can't be doing that in class and not expecting something bad to happen, bro. Anyways, final story of a weird kid getting expelled. We're going to call the subscriber who submitted the story Muscle Man. His regular show names. Anyways, there's a kid in Muscle Man's class who never showered. And I don't mean like showered once a week or twice a week, or even twice a week can be acceptable, I guess. This kid like never did. So he had this really thick coat of grease in his hair. Like, bro was shiny. Like, he would reflect. Like, if you shine a light on him, it would reflect right back at you. So there's another kid in Muscle Man's class. There's the kid who never showered, but then there's also this kind of, like, sketchy kid who's always, always kind of riding the edge or whatever. I don't really know how else to put it, but he was always doing stuff that was very questionable, to say the least. And one day, the kid who never showered was sitting in class, and Muscle Man was sitting in class too. And all of a sudden, Muscle Man hears some kid yelling. He turns around, and he sees the kid who never showers. He sees his hair lit on fire. Yeah, so apparently the kid, right, the weird kid who sat behind the kid who never showered, saw how greasy his hair was, and took out the lighter that he smuggled into school, probably like smoked cigarettes or something behind the school, right? Took the lighter, and was just like, I don't know. He probably thought, oh, I'll light one strand of hair on fire, like, it'll be fine, right? No. I mean, first of all, what's the logic behind that? Like, oh, I'll just light one piece of hair on fire. It's definitely not all going to, like, explode. It's not all going to catch on fire, man. Just some of it. Of course, bro. That makes a lot of sense. But anyways, right, yeah, his entire hair caught on fire. Thankfully, though, the teacher was quick with it. Teacher grabbed the fire extinguisher, just blew it all over his head, right? And, Muscle Man was not expecting to see this kid's head lit on fire, but it happened. Immediately after the teacher realized or checked in to make sure this kid was okay, the teacher went back and grabbed this kid, right? First of all, he grabbed the lighter out of this kid's hand, and he grabbed the kid and dragged him up to the front of class and dragged him out of there. And sure enough, believe it or not, you actually will not be allowed to stay in school if you light another kid's hair on fire. I know that's crazy, right? Ridiculous. And the kid was telling them, because like a kid really didn't want to get expelled, and he was already on thin ice, and he was telling them, look, I didn't mean to do it. It was an accident. Like, a spark flew from my lighter. And first of all, that was definitely a lie. This kid definitely did intend to set this kid's hair on fire, which is pretty messed up. But even if a spark accidentally flew from his lighter, the administration still told him, like, okay, first of all, very unlikely story, but even if that was true, right? Even if you were telling the truth, you still can't, it's still very, very, like, illegal to bring a lighter to school. It's still very, very much against our rules. And we would punish you basically the same for even just having a lighter at school. So the weird kid wasn't able to get out of this one, and he got expelled. And Muscle Man never saw him again in school, but saw him once, years later in the mall. This kid, even though he was kind of, weirder, definitely was on the edgier side, Muscle Man had some good conversations with him. So Muscle Man, when he saw him in the mall, went up to him and said, hey, man, how's it been going? And the kid actually said, things have been pretty good. I've been going to a school that's definitely a bit more better for people like me, but I've also picked up, a hobby of working on cars, and I got an internship this summer at the local car place, and my life's actually going really well. So even though this kid got expelled from his main school and was doing some pretty messed up stuff, it sounds like he got his life together, which you just simply love to see it. Click on the video on screen right now. I know you'll enjoy it. Just click it, do it.